what do you think it's going to take for someone to beat Matt Fraser at the CrossFit Games? So we know that he's won 2 in a row now, big favourite coming in, and I know the conversation has been, okay, if someone like a Fraser or a Fikowski could be consistent enough and then just hope that he drops off for one event and then kind of get a jump on him, is that the only way that someone's going to win, do you reckon? Welcome to the CrossFit by Design podcast. We're back for part 2 of a conversation about the upcoming CrossFit Games with Mrs. Cath Wallace. Miss Cath Wallace. Miss Cath Wallace. How are you?
Good, thanks, Tom. How are you today?
Very good, very good. So, last week we were talking about some of the athletes who are going to the Games and sort of have a potential to be top 5. Because typically, unless you're cracking the top 10, I think a lot of athletes just go under the radar. You don't hear of them. So
definitely.
There's normally some perennial top contenders for the podium. So we've talked about them. When you get to the Games, when you're watching the CrossFit Games, which is obviously exciting and a lot of people enjoy watching the CrossFit Games, we get to see into the lives of the athletes. And this is true with any kind of sports event, but I think CrossFit, they do a really good job of their media team in terms of they give you a lot of coverage and they give you a lot of exposure to the athletes and behind the scenes. And so you do kind of get to know the athletes, and that's what kind of makes it different, is you feel like you're part of the athlete's journey and you do get to see a side of them which you may not see in other sports. So that being said, because it is such a snapshot where you see their Instagram page, you see their social media, you see their interviews on the CrossFit Games, you kind of get a caricature image of what they're like and what that person's like. Do you think that's a good thing, or how do you think that affects how we view people? Because it's easy to kind of view people as, they're like this, but that's just the way they interview. Yeah. What do you reckon?
I think it's a good thing. And I don't think there's any athlete that is presented in a negative way. I mean, there's no one that they sort of, because you would know that you can manipulate stuff.
Yeah, of course.
There's no one that they target, I don't think, at all. All the athletes come across as likeable, and it's interesting, and as you say, it's like really awesome to actually feel like you get to know what they're like and just even their feelings before and after events. And I think because we're CrossFitters ourselves, like, you know the feeling before a workout when you're anxious or excited or whatever, and they're just going through the same thing but on a much larger scarier scale, I guess.
There seems to be sort of 2 different athletes. You've got some athletes who they're completely open and they don't have any issues, talking about what they're going through and how they're feeling, and then other athletes are kind of just, game face on, just focus on the next event, the next kind of thing. Do you think that changes people's perception of who they are?
It probably does, and it probably shouldn't, because I can understand, especially before an event, if they're not wanting to talk to whoever because they've got their plan in their mind and they're thinking about what's ahead.
Yes.
So I think that's totally understandable. I suppose if afterwards, though, when everything's finished, I mean, I think a particular athlete that I'm thinking of is probably thinking of the next event, though, so he doesn't want to be talking to the media. And I suppose that's fair enough. Yeah. Do you think the athletes have a responsibility, though, to the fans to an extent, definitely, to sort of reveal something about themselves to a certain extent? And I think, like, after the regional events, for example, they should know if they're going to win their heat, then they're going to get an interview if they're in the 3rd or the 4th heat. And I think, they should be expecting that and prepared for that. And they all seem like they're willing to do that anyway. Like, no one's ever said no, and they probably could. I'm not sure. Yeah. Do you think because there's so much social media exposure now, everyone's on social media, they're giving their updates and sort of sharing their heart in a way that's very not manipulated, but you're able to control the persona you present in your social media. Do you think that has not detrimental health benefits, but do you think that there's a mental health aspect there that's potentially disruptive or damaging if you're an athlete and you're constantly trying to keep up to date and present an image? Do you think that can weigh people down? Yeah, definitely it would. And I mean, even if they're putting up positive posts, they're going to have their haters that are going to be commenting on their pictures. And for Instagram, and I know a lot of the athletes say that they do actually read all the comments. So I know personally, if I was getting attacked for things, I'd probably deactivate my account. Yeah, don't be a hater, people. That's right. Don't be a hater. Only nice things. Okay, so speaking of interviews, who do
And you and I have talked a lot about some of the athletes who we like and who are our favourites.
Yeah.
And often they're for reasons that just don't make any sense. But we do like it when an athlete opens up in an interview. So who are some athletes who do really good interviews and they just tend to be really open and nice in that way?
So someone that probably has totally changed my mind about them via their interviews. So Brent Fikowski, I didn't used to love him for whatever reason. No, it was just, he didn't do anything. I just took a dislike to him. But then as he was winning more and more events at regionals, and then he's won a few at the games now, he just seems like he's really funny, and I like that he can make fun of himself as well.
He's got a very cool sense of humour.
He does, So he's someone that I think interviews quite well. So I really like him now. He's one of my favourite athletes, where I would have put him on my not top athletes.
I think as CrossFitters, we're constantly, what's the strategy you're using? What are you feeling like? And he opens up about, I tried this and here's my strategy.
Yeah.
Opening up rather than being so closed of, no, I stayed in my lane.
Yes, that's right.
I just went hard.
Yeah.
So.
And him in particular, I mean, he's known as the professor, so he obviously really thinks about what he's doing.
Which is funny because Patrick Vellner's actually the one trained to be a doctor, and yet
he's an accountant or something, isn't he?
Yeah, and Fikowski's an accountant. So it's funny. Who else do you like that interviews well?
So someone that I thought interviewed really well at the Pacific Regional was Dean Linda Layton.
Okay.
So I think it was probably the first interview I'd seen with him, but it was after he won whichever event he won, and just the fact that he was so happy about it and proud, and it was just really nice to see, like just genuine happiness for winning. So,
and we've talked about humility on this podcast before, but you can tell when that comes across. If an athlete is truly humble, like, wow, I'm just so grateful to be here,
which he
I'm
was
just trying my best, and they're not. They don't bring across this ego, and I'm sure being a top athlete, there's some aspect of an ego that's always there. But I think when you present yourself in a way that's showing humility, especially when you've got so many people watching, I think that presents a good example, especially to younger people who are watching.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think Tia interviews quite well too. Like she's very
very open,
and
just open, honest.
She just seems really like a nice person.
Yeah. What about Sean Sweeney? Now we saw Sean Sweeney qualify again for the games with the cowboy hat. He seemed to really open up and was just sort of laid it all on the line, laughing and making jokes, which might fly in the face of some of the other athletes at the games. But what do you think about his?
He was great. So like we've sort of talked about in the past, just his interview and the way he was made us both really notice him and like him a lot. And I now follow him on Instagram. Something else that I loved about him was he had. With the pistol event, like the judge made a mistake and called him back, and then in his interview he made sure to say, that wasn't the judge's fault, and whereas a lot of other athletes possibly might have blamed the other person, but he took total ownership and time. I really liked that about him.
Yeah. It's cool because it's easy, as we talked about Camille last week, it's easy to get caught up on a no rep, or if a judge calls you on something and something doesn't go your way, it's so easy to just throw everything out the window. But in reality, you can't control that. So you've just almost got to, take a deep breath, have a laugh at yourself and move on. Yeah.
And he really seemed to do that. Like you could just see mentally that he's like, right, that's done. Nothing I could do about it next. And then he ended up winning his region. Yeah.
Speaking of winning the region, when we look at the cross-regional comparison, and this is something that I know Seven for Savan at CrossFit.com has talked about a bit, in the sense that the South Regional seems to be substantially weaker in terms of the athletes it's bringing to the games than all of the other regions.
For sure.
We talked about Travis Mayer, finished 6th or 7th?
Yes, 6th in his region.
In the region. In the Atlantic Regional, finished 18th across all regionals, and yet Sean Sweeney, who won the South Regional, came 52nd.
Yeah.
So do you think that should come into play at some point in the future?
I think so, and I mean, as we've also spoke about in the past, they're obviously trying to fix that because they changed the regions around this year to eliminate like the California region. I don't know what they can really do though. Beyond. I'm not sure.
Would it be worth only sending 4 from the south and say giving?
I suppose they could do that, but then
give another one to the central. But
regions are going to change, aren't
exactly.
they?
And people are going to move. What if 3 people from the central all of a sudden move to the south, and now all of a sudden you've got
that's
top
right.
guys.
Now they're there. So I don't know, unless there's some way of doing it overall, and then the top 40 go. But then I don't know. And I'm sure after. Because there's been a bit of an uproar on social media about Travis finishing 18th and not going. Dave Castro would be very aware because he's been tagged in a whole lot of stuff to do with this. I'm sure they're trying to think of something to fix the problem somehow.
Because you know, if you've got an athlete who could potentially finish top 10 at the games, which I mean, I think Travis has the potential to, then you want them at the games because you want the fittest. Right. The claim is that we're testing the fittest through open to regionals to the games. We're bringing the fittest athletes, and they say they make a big deal about you can be sure that the CrossFit Games athletes are the fittest, and then we're going to find the fittest. And I think you'll still find the fittest, but when you think about top 10 and that kind of thing, so it's challenging. Speaking about the games in particular, what are some of the aspects, if people are going to be watching the CrossFit Games, what are some things to look for that you certainly because we've got a new venue, it's at Madison now instead of in California. What are some of the aspects of the CrossFit Games that's really fun to watch and that we've seen in the past?
Well, I watch every single second of it, so but I realise some of the events, probably the bike event last year could be a little bit boring to watch because it was not really boring, but longer, and then the swim is hard as well because you don't know who's where. Yeah. So the events,
there's a whole group of people out there somewhere.
The events that are in, what do they call it in Madison?
Colosseum.
The Colosseum. There you go. Are always very exciting because it's what we're used to traditionally at regions, I guess, with your lanes and who's where.
So do you think that there's any difference now that they're swimming in the lake as opposed to the ocean? Do you reckon that has an effect?
Well, I would think from my experience that swimming in the ocean would have been harder, but then I don't know. It's still the lake didn't seem easy by any means, and there was lots of comments afterwards about how it was still quite difficult.
I heard some of the athletes, they were feeling sick because they inhaled some of the dirty lake water.
So that would not be fun. But I mean, I suppose you'd get that with seawater as well. You wouldn't really want to be swallowing a whole lot of that.
So, finishing up, what do you think it's going to take? What do you think it's going to take for someone to beat Matt Fraser at the CrossFit Games? So we know that he's won 2 in a row now, big favourite coming in, and I know the conversation has been if someone like a Fraser or a Fikowski could be consistent enough, and then just hope that he drops off for one event, and then kind of get a jump on him. Is that the only way that someone's going to win? Do you reckon?
I think so, because I mean, he doesn't, unless he bombs at one event, which doesn't really seem likely because he doesn't have weaknesses.
Many weaknesses,
other than that, the air assault runner or whatever it's called, and I'm sure he's been running on that ever since region, so it's probably not a weakness anymore.
Probably bought one and just did a 24-hour AMRAP of hitting the stupid thing.
So I think, that really is the only way. Someone else needs to be really, really, really consistent the whole way across as well.
All right, so who's your pick if your prediction, 1, 2, 3 for the women's side, who's going to be podium in order? What's your prediction?
Okay, so I will go with Tia, number 1. I'm going to say Katrin will be number 2. And a little bit of my heart here, Sarah, number 3.
Okay.
What do you think?
I reckon... I think Katrin looks super, super dangerous. I think there are still some holes in Tia's game. I know Katrin has a weakness with heavy cleans, and potentially some of the. I mean, and there's some other sort of specific, workouts that Katrin has a little bit of a slip back in that could cost her. Whereas I know Tia's also got some holes. Tia's got things like handstand walking,
which she's been working on.
I don't know if
that's a weakness anymore.
And there's some with Tia particularly some heavyweight, high rep movements. I mean, she's good at Olympic lifting in the single reps, but I think some of the high rep, fairly heavyweight barbell movement, say like Cara Webb is good at, Sarah and Katrin are good at. So there's definitely some, as opposed to Matt Fraser, where it seems like there's very few holes. Katrin and Tia both have a couple of sort of holes in their game they're still working on. And that being said, I think Katrin, even though she lost last year, I still think she's a step ahead of Tia in that sense. So I'd say Katrin. I think Katrin will probably win it. And I honestly think that when it comes to the games, I think Cara, if she can get it all together, I think she has got enough potential that she could finish second. I think Tia third.
Yeah, okay.
Which is crazy to think, Sarah and Annie might make the podium. So I think that'll be the order. So, well, thank you. Thank you for coming on, Cath.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
I've enjoyed this, and hopefully next year we can see some of our more favourite athletes.
Back in there again. Lucas Parker,
Lucero, Dan Bailey. Maybe they can make a comeback.
That would be good.
So thank you for coming on.
No worries at all.
And I'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
There we go.